Sveiki, čia Vincentas Fulbinskas, kaip visad sveiki sugrįžę į Lietuvą Ameriką. Šiandien kalbame su ypatingu svečiu, JAV kongresmenu Mario Diaz-Balart, Respublikonų iš Floridos, aktyviai dirbančių JAV atstovų rūmo užsienio reikalų komitete. Mario šeima tai gyvas pavyzdys, ką reiškia laisvės kaina. Jo brolis, Lincoln Diaz-Balart, buvo vienas iš pirmųjų kubiečių kilmės kongresmenų JAV istorijoje. Aršiai kritikavęs Castro režimą ir visą savo politinę karjerą skyręs kovai už demokratiją Kuboje ir visam pasaulyje. Tai šeima, kuriai laisvė nėra tuščias žodis, tai paveldėta atsakomybė. Šis pokalbis ne apie įstatymų leidybą ar vidaus politiką, tai atviras strateginis žvilgsnis į tai, kaip Amerika mato Europą. Kaip Europą mato Ameriką ir ką abi pusės turi suprasti, jei nori išlikti sąjungininkais, o ne tik istoriniais sentimentais grįstais partneriais. Kalbame apie vertybių skirtumus, požiūris į grėsmes, apie tai, kur dar yra sąlyčio taškų ir ką turime daryti kartu, kad vakarai išliktų jėga, kuri gina, o ne tik reaguoja. Tad gero klausimo, o išvadas jos paliksime jums.
Do you hear me, Mario? Oh my God, Mario. Do you hear me well?
I do. How are you, my friend?
Oh my God, so well. Thank you so much for doing it. This is my early morning in DC.
My pleasure. It's every day here is a crazy day. So
Okay, Vincent. So Vincent is, my partner. He's like third generation American Lithuanian who returned from US back.
Right.
His grandfather was deputy speaker. His father was the one with whom we created kind of young Republicans of
Wow.
Lithuania.
Wonderful.
Mario, how much time do we have? Like few minutes, 10 minutes?
There, yeah, as fast as it can be is better for me.
Okay, good. So we will do it only on audio, and if we could start, I will just go. Okay.
Biggies,
so-
look at my tie.
oh my God, this is Lithuania, and you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I will make first and third question, and second will be from Vincentas.
So this is only audio then?
This is on audio. Yes, this is only audio. And to explain our audience about, the need of transatlantic relations despite all the changes in Washington and so on.
Perfect.
So, Mario, really, thank you so much. As I always say, you together with your late brother, again, condolences. You've been the first congressman I ever saw, and you've been so kind to introduce me to the Hill. And you've been the one, together with Lincoln, who showed the link between different freedom fighting arenas. I still remember Lincoln coming to Lithuania and making powerful speech about freedom fight in Belarus and in Cuba. You helped us on Ukraine. I still remember your powerful speech. So, explain why all those freedom fights also in Taiwan, in all other areas, are so connected. Why you've been fighting for us. You are of Cuban descent, and we are, Lithuanian Americans. Why it is so connected?
But first, Gimantas, thank you. I hope you realize the deep respect and admiration that I have towards you, and as well as my brother Lincoln. Thank you for those kind words about my brother also had towards you. I in the years that I've been in elected office, which is now running on over 3 decades, you are one of the most passionate, articulate, and principled leaders that I've ever had the honor to deal with. And so I just hope that you understand that for me, you are not only a dear friend, but you're also an example and a leader. And I'm so grateful for your leadership. Speaking of leadership, there is no secret that the thugs, the tyrannies, the dictatorships, they're unified. They're unified in purpose, and they're unified in strategy in many times. And, we could talk about Belarus, we could talk about Cuba, we could talk about Russia, we could talk about communist China, North Korea, Iran, on and on. They have very strong alliances. Some of them are more direct, but they're all very strongly allied and unified in purpose and in agenda. And unfortunately, what happens with the West, or with free peoples and free countries, is that sometimes there's confusion. There's confusion as to why we should stand firm against tyranny. There's confusion sometimes as to who our allies and who our adversaries are. And there's also temptation to look at the world not as it is, but as we would like it to be. And so that's why I think it's very important to be clear-eyed. And it is true that you deal with different countries and different circumstances differently, of course. But I think it's very important to understand who are the allies and who are the adversaries, who have agendas that are against the interest of the free world, and whose agenda is the same as those of us that believe in freedom and in prosperity for our people. And a lot of time that confusion is not only it ends up being very dangerous, in particular in the mid and long term.
Thank you, Mario, and thank you also for those kind words. Vincentas, please.
Good afternoon or good morning to you, Congressman. Thank you very much again for taking the time to speak with us. So my question would be this. It looks like this, right? Every 4 years, it seems that we in Europe, and especially in countries that used to be occupied by communist regimes, seem to have the same problem, term after term, that we have to. It seems that we have to keep reminding the Americans and those that we hold closest to us as allies, who in fact the enemy is. That we are the enemy. That the axis of evil still exists, maybe under a different banner and a different name, but it still exists. Russia, Iran, North Korea. What do we do wrong strategically when it comes to trying to convince you, the Americans, on how to act with this axis of evil, that it seems that you seem to forget every 4 years, and we have to remind you again?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And look, the reality is that in democratic countries, changes happen, and that can be challenging, but it's also a positive thing, right? And that's exactly what we want for the entire world: is for a government to be replaceable by the people, by the will of the people. And I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I would argue that that's not limited to the United States. Now, I do have a little confession to you all. I think among the most clear-eyed people in the entire planet are the Lithuanians. And I think that's, I'm not a historian or a psychologist, but I think it has to be associated with the fact that Lithuania has suffered under communism, has had to deal with the Nazis. And by the way, you have, a pretty bad situation as a neighbor, right? That you had to deal with, not now, but you've had to deal with for 1,000 years. And I think that kind of emphasizes and re-emphasizes history and the importance of being firm. So I really will tell you that Lithuania has always been among the most clear-eyed countries in the planet. I would argue that the United States, while it has had good or bad leadership, still remains a beacon of light. And I will also, I always remember, and Zygimantas was ambassador to his great country, to the United States. And I'm reminded that during the very dark times of the Soviet occupation of Lithuania, the embassy of Lithuania here in the United States always stayed. And the United States always recognized Lithuania as an independent, sovereign country, even when, again, the Soviet Union, in essence, had tried to absorb it, right? And so Now, there are times when the United States is stronger in its pursuit for freedom, and times that it's weaker. But I don't think that, and that's again, change of governments. And so I don't disagree with what you're saying. I would also, though, remind everybody that, for example, in Europe, while Europe has been attacked, right, by Putin and Russia, there are still multiple, frankly, most of European countries that, while on one hand they are trying to help Ukraine, with the other hand, they're helping Russia's strongest ally in the Western Hemisphere. There are, as you know, there are Cuban troops fighting in Ukraine right now, killing Ukrainians, and yet, whether it's the government of Spain, I mean, we can go on and on and on and on. Most of the European countries are still bending over backwards to help the dictatorship 90 miles away from the United States in Cuba. So what you're just mentioning is I think a problem that I started with, which is that sometimes the West, for whatever reason, doesn't take these dictatorships, these evil dictatorships, serious enough until it really gets dangerous. And I think that's a problem of the West. That's the problem of democracies, which is why I emphasize that it's important to not get confused who our allies are, who our adversaries are. And just because, evil sometimes does something good, it doesn't make it good. It's still evil. Like good sometimes does stupid bad things, doesn't make it evil. And I think, unfortunately, change of governments or just convenience sometimes makes that fact easy to ignore, if not easy to forget.
Thank you, Mario. And last question from my side. You've been the person who always helped us. Even the last Lithuanian reception in Library of Congress, I understand that you reserved the room for us. I still remember how you helped the Baltic speakers to meet Speaker Johnson when it was still this big decision on Ukrainian supplemental in limbo. And now Secretary Rubio, he was one of the first, he called Baltic foreign ministers as one of the first. He just met Baltic foreign ministers physically in DC. And do you think that Secretary Rubio, whom I remember still as senator, I think I met him first in Reagan Library in LA, he might be the advocate of the Baltic states, of all those freedom fighting nations in DC? Do you think maybe we could even, succeed in luring him to the Baltics, especially if Trump is coming to NATO summit, maybe Warsaw? So, we are very close. Do you think that Secretary Rubio can be our gateway to this new administration that we not always know how to approach?
Yeah, look, I think it doesn't take long, if one just barely scratches the surface, to see that the Baltic states are doing everything that can be asked of them, and more. One of the things that President Trump, and by the way, I agree with him on this, has been, just really upsets him, is when many European countries who are, and that's fine, continually ask for assistance from the United States in their defense, then don't even do the basic requirements that they have committed to do under NATO. And that's just not acceptable. It's just not. It's not fair to tell the United States or anybody else, I want you to do so much for me, but I refuse to do pretty much anything to support my own security, right? And that's the kind of thing that President Trump that it drives him crazy. And I think rightfully so. Now, where that is not the case, as in the Baltics, where each and every country is doing more than their required amount, percentage-wise, for their own defense, and by the way, doing a lot more than that, even to help, for example, Ukraine deal with this Russian invasion. And so it doesn't take long if one once one looks at the situation, to realize that once again the Baltics are leading in a very positive way. Unfortunately, what happens a lot of time is that Europe gets kind of thrown in together, right? And with good and bad and everything else, it gets all thrown in together. And there is no secret, we can point at government after government. These are great European countries that I consider strong allies, but who again don't even fulfill their NATO requirement of 2% of GDP. And so who's very familiar with that is Senator Marco Rubio, who's now Secretary of State. I don't think there's anybody better in the entire United States to be Secretary of State than Marco Rubio. Having said that, this administration, the Trump administration, has inherited nightmares. They're dealing with those nightmares in a very aggressive fashion. And I would argue that, yes, that Secretary of State Rubio is keenly aware of the realities of the different countries in Europe, is keenly aware of the Baltics, is keenly aware of who's stepping up and who isn't, who is helping the enemies of the United States and the adversaries of the United States in the Western Hemisphere, and who isn't. And once again, I will tell you that the leader and the example to follow is Lithuania.
Thank you, Mario, so much. And I really believe that this advocacy of Secretary Rubio and your advocacy on the Hill will help us to maneuver. As you know, we will always be advocates of Ukraine. We want this country to not only survive, win. I dream about Ukraine joining NATO as well as EU. Nobody believed when we had those dreams, Mario. Nobody thought sure we might be part of EU and NATO, and I think Ukrainians will do it. But on the other hand, I really hope that we will live till the day when Cuba will be free, and as your brother hoped that we will be able to visit free Cuba together. Thank you, Mario, and God bless you, and all the best on the Hill.
As likewise, my friend. Please know how much I respect and admire you. And on top of that, I am a great admirer of Lithuania.
If I could, before we say goodbye, I mean, if you still have the time, Representative, just a couple of things that I noticed. First of all, you did mention the aggressive fashion, the way the new administration is working, and perhaps according to some not without reason, but this aggressive fashion, of course, has also, or aggressive strategy, let's call it that, has also come into play vis-a-vis Europe, right? The oldest allies of the United States, and we love America, the idea of America. Notwithstanding this, but you have to understand that it does frighten us, because when we think of America, we think of the GIs in Europe that saved us from fascism, saved us from Hitler. When we think of America in Lithuania and the Baltics, we think of Reagan, we think of that incredible speech at the Berlin Wall. We think of freedom. And when we see this new sort of angry, this very, I don't even know how to put it, this very aggressive and adversarial rhetoric when it comes to us Europeans, it makes us nervous and it makes us think, do we still have an ally in the West? And it scares us. And I think, I mean, it is having the knock-on effect of making Europe, start to invest in its own defense, take its own security seriously, little by little. But I'm worried what implications that has for the future of European-American relations.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up some valid points. I would argue, however, that it was President Trump in his first term who started arming the Ukrainians. So while his rhetoric was in essence the same, telling Europe, you have to do your part. Don't count on us if you don't do your own part. It was President Trump, not President Obama, and not President Biden at the beginning, who actually sent weaponry and started training the Ukrainians. And every president that I'm aware of has been really, American president, I should say, has been very concerned about Europe. Many, again, I'm not talking about Lithuania, many European countries who have just neglected their own defense. And we have example after example after example of, for example, when Europe and NATO decided to intervene, in essence, remembering the whole Libya issue. I hate to say this, but Europe, in essence, ran out of everything in a week. And that was not a war against Russia, right? And so, how many American presidents have been concerned about Europe not doing its obligation? It's fulfilling its own obligation. And so, whether one likes or doesn't like President Trump's rhetoric, what you said is true. Europe now is starting to realize that it's got to do its own part. It has to fulfill its own obligations. It was President Trump who got out of the nuclear treaty with Russia because Russia violated it. And it was President Biden, despite his rhetoric that may have been sounding really good, who got back into it, demanding nothing from Putin. So if the only thing that you listen to is rhetoric, yeah, maybe Biden's rhetoric is prettier. But if you look at the history of actual, of what's actually happened, Putin didn't invade. Putin in his multiple invasions, I'm talking about now in our lifetime, right? Remember, you went into Georgia, you went into Crimea, right? When did he do those things? He went into Georgia. It was between Bush and Obama. He went into Crimea. Well, again, look. So if you're only concerned about rhetoric, I grant that. But if you want a Europe that is unified in fighting evil, then sometimes it requires some of the United States to tell the Europeans, do your part. And that should scare nobody. That should incentivize everybody to do their part, their legal requirement under NATO. And again, if you look at not rhetoric, but action, I'd much rather have Trump than Biden. I'd much rather have Trump than Obama. And I know that Europe loved President Obama, but under President Obama, the only thing that the Ukrainians got were blankets. So you tell me, which one do you prefer?
Thank you, Mario. And just to, I would say, summarize, we do not like presidents who appease evil. We really like presidents who fight for freedom. And we really hope that we will win together. And see you soon in DC. Thank you for your help in connecting all those dots. Thank you for interpreting us in DC and for interpreting this administration to my region. Thank you, Mario. And
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Na, kaip jums toks pokalbis? Aš tai manau, kad aišku viena. Bendrą kalbą su Amerika įmanoma rasti. Bet tai reikalauja kantrybės, supratimo ir tvirtų vertybinių pamatų. Tad didelis ačiū žygiui, kuris ir šį kartą parodė, ką reiškia nuosekliai ginti Lietuvos interesus JAV, nepataikaujant, bet kalbant iš esmės. Ir taip, skirtumai tarp tos Amerikos, kurią pažinojame po nepriklausomybės ir šiandienos realybės, jaučiasi vis stipriau. Tai vis dar mūsų sąjungininkė, bet nebe savaime suprantama, kad ji visada bus vertybinė lyderė. Todėl turime galvoti, kaip kalbėti, kad būtume girdimi ir ką daryti, kad patys neištirtume tarp didžiųjų žaidėjų interesų. Ačiū, kad klausotės, o jei norit, kad tokie pokalbiai pasiektų daugiau žmonių, pasidalinkit ir iki kitų kartų. Ačiū.